right? Use the e-collar even when you don't need to.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the biggest mistakes I have clients make, right, is when they have a dog and the dog is fresh out of training and they think the dog is really good because when they put the e-collar on, the dog behaves. So they start taking the e-collar off all the time. Mm-hmm. And the dog does good for a little bit, but then realizes they don't have the collar on, and then they start misbehaving. Then we go, oh, we got to put the e-collar back on, right? Mm-hmm. And you create this pattern of when the dog misbehaves, e-collar comes out and goes on, right? Which does a couple of things. One, it creates a clear contrast of behavior with tool on versus behavior without tool on, which is not what we want. That's how you train collar wiseness, right? Thing number two, if historically you're putting the e-collar on, and as soon as you put it on, you're using it because you're needing it in that moment, you're training a negative association with the collar as well, right? Collar goes on, we use the collar. Collar goes on, we use the collar, right? I want it to be a neutral thing. I want it to be like anything else. Your dog's flat collar that they wear around all fucking day long. Mm-hmm. Your dog ain't thinking twice about that collar because it's just always there. Right? They're not associating them getting stung by a bee in the yard with the flat collar being on, or their negative encounter with another dog at the dog park with that collar being on, because it's just always on.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are so concerned about creating negative associations with these tools. That's how you avoid it.
Yeah.
Right? So I've said it a million times before. Now listen, I'm understanding that as you progress through training, they may not need to wear it 24/7, but predict the places where you would need it and always put it on whether you actually need it or not in those situations. So my big three: people coming over the house, going off leash anywhere, and going anywhere in public. So anywhere aside my house. Right? And because I always put it on in those situations, regardless of if I actually need it or not, I'm never caught off guard. I rarely ever need to actually use it. I don't ever put the collar on being reactionary to my dogs. And the collar is just a neutral nothing thing to them.
Yep.
It's not correlated to anything aside from it's just a fucking collar.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Just so, like, for the normal person, just anytime you're going to go outside or anything like that, that's when you just
pop it on.
Just pop it on. Okay.
Next sentence. Have also used a prong collar when he goes to obedience class.
Also uses a prong collar when he goes to obedience class.
Have also used a prong collar when he goes to obedience class.
This is kind of the same thing with the
same fucking thing.
E-collar, right? Yeah.
Right? Why are you only using it when he goes to obedience class?
Use it when he's out of obedience class.
Yeah, right? Because, like, same deal. Like, 1,000,001 clients come to me and they say, David, my dog listens so good in this training session, but then I go home and they don't listen as good, right?
Yeah.
What are you doing different at home versus at the training class, right? Like, I mean, the dog listens. This training class was a neutral place at some point, or our session we did at Edgewater was a neutral place at some point.
Yeah.
So that means you're doing something different. A lot of people, I see it. Well, I don't do as many one-on-ones as I used to. I used to see it all the time. People would come into their training session. They get into the facility. They get prong collar out, they get the e-collar on, they get the treat pouch, right? They got all the things and they're fucking ready to go. And then they're on it. They nail it, right? They're like, boom, 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 boom. Dog's listening great, doing awesome, off leash, boom, boom. And then we go, all right, great, session's over, time to go home. And they're like, okay, take the prong collar off, take the e-collar off, put the treat pouch away, right? And then the dog goes fucking pulling them out the door, right? To go back home.
Like, oh.
Right? So it's just like...
Yeah.
That you don't create the contrast. It's the same thing as all these others, right? Don't create the contrast, right? Make whatever you're doing in your training classes that's making the dog listen, right? And making them well behaved. That's just real life, right? It's like, it's the same thing. I'm beating a dead horse with it, right? But we'll do a session with people and it's like, we'll work doorway manners for the whole fucking session, right? And the dog will do so well with it. And then it's like, session's over and they go to do the last door going out to their fucking car and it's a disaster. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Do it the same way we just did it for the last fucking 45 minutes.
Yeah. And you see people like, they like, let's say you're doing like one a week lessons and like, you'll see that they'll have like a problem with something like the day after that you worked on, but then they're like, oh, well, we'll just wait till that they kind of push it off till their next session. It's like they do like just kind of put like a wall up between what a session is and what real life is.
Yeah. And listen, I could say that some trainers need to take some responsibility for this, because I know when I first started getting into this, I never corrected people on that. It was just like, come in, get your dog geared up, let's start working, right? And I didn't do an effective enough job of coaching them through how to then take that and take it home with them, you know?
Yeah.
So we could start there and put the responsibility on ourselves as trainers to coach people through making those adjustments and catering our training that we do at the facility to real life things, right?
Yeah.
So the pictures you're working at the facility, you need to make sure it can be replicated identically back home as well, right? And if not, you need to look at changing your lesson plan a little bit with stuff.
Yeah.